I was a doubter, but I think I get it now. These new flashlights all follow the trend of packing a billion features into a slim, flat form factor. This design is far more pocketable, but much to the chagrin of many enthusiasts, the batteries are built-in and non-replaceable. Is this a worthwhile trade-off? These lights were sent to me for a comparison video, and I ended up liking them all quite a bit after a few months of use. Stick around to the end of the video for a big giveaway of a bunch of lights. I have here the Olight Arkfeld Ultra, the Wurkkos HD01 in both the laser and UV versions, the Jetbeam E26, and the Nitecore EDC 29. These all follow the same basic design principle. A long, slim, flat light that is very pocketable. Most have a white LED, laser pointer, and UV light in the same host, the exception being the Nitecore, a slightly different class of light, which is still feature-packed with its multiple switches, mini screen, and throw-flood combo emitters. The Arkfeld Ultra is the best built, with a special aluminum alloy and anodizing that is extremely scratch resistant. It's also just slightly larger than the smaller Arkfeld. Similar to that older Arkfeld is the Wurkkos HD01, which I have in both the UV and laser configurations, though a Pro model exists that has both. This is a very simple light with a basic but solid construction. The Nitecore EDC 29 has a sandwich construction, two stainless steel pieces bolted to either side of a carbon fiber composite frame that allows two heat sinks to poke through. On top is an OLED screen, two clicky dual stage E-switches, and a sliding lock. Neat. Jetbeam's E26 is interesting in that there is an exposed waterproof USB-C port on the side, which is definitely more convenient to use than the others, but will certainly accumulate gunk over time. Though I have to admit, in use I actually quite liked this design. All of these lights have accessible screws, but are Loctited, and I did not find them easy to disassemble. The clips are easy enough to remove, and are pretty good across the board, except for the Nitecore, which is just very not deep carry. The Olight Arkfeld has a very easy to use and satisfying selector ring that switches between the modes, with the center E-switch that adjusts output levels as normal. This very intuitive and effective style of operation has been mostly copied by the Jetbeam, which doesn't feel quite as nice to use, but it does have a nice dedicated lockout position. At the rear of the E26 is a forward clicky for direct access to turbo. Turbo is also in the main mode cycle. The Arkfeld Ultra, weirdly enough, jumps to strobe on a double press and requires a triple press for turbo. A bad decision in my opinion. Also, the lockout still sucks as ever. It requires a long press and hold from off. Wurkkos opted for a much simpler system with two buttons, one for main output and the other for the secondary functions. The main button works as normal, while the secondary switch is a simple on-off for the laser or UV light, and a press and hold to work with the RGB side light. This is all I'll say about the side light, because while it has the warm white high CRI mode, which is neat I guess, I just don't see a use for it at all. One thing that I did find quite annoying between the two different versions of the Wurkkos light was that the main emitter button and the secondary emitter button were swapped between the two models. On the UV version, the secondary button was where I expected the main output to be, so it was pretty confusing to use and especially to swap between the two. The EDC 29 also has two buttons, which are very unique and well thought out. The larger, more prominent button is two-stage, a half press cycling the modes, and a full press turning the light on or off. This means you can select the desired mode before turning the light on, which is really cool. The second switch is for momentary turbo modes, also two-stage, with a half press activating only the center thrower emitters and a full press blasting everything at maximum output. Or you can set it to turbo and strobe. The screen displays the available runtime for these modes, which is also very nice. The two different switch profiles makes them easy to differentiate. Overall, an excellent design. It seems clear to me that the designers of most of these lights anyway are trying to cater to a more tactical crowd with the emphasis on strobe and immediate turbo, which is fine I guess, but it just seems like a strange decision for this particular category of light. I just feel this form factor is not suited for that kind of use, but to each their own I guess. While runtimes matter more, flashlights sell based on their advertised turbo numbers, and all of these are pretty good. Look, I just want to talk about this Nitecore for a second. It totally shocked me with its insane high output. They advertise at 6500 lumens, which is kinda nuts. But according to my integrating sphere, at turn on, with a fresh charge, this thing is pumping out over 14,000 lumens on turbo. Absolutely ludicrous for a light that size. It honestly has me doubting my sphere, but accurate or not, this thing is just stupid bright. They certainly succeeded in blowing away the competition with these compound emitters, so bravo to Nitecore. The rest kinda look lame in comparison, but the thing is they're still great. The Jetbeam and Olight are close with about 1900 lumens on turbo, which is still very bright, and the Wurkkos is just a bit less at 1700 lumens. Really, none of these are lacking in power. But let's talk about the good stuff, sustainable output. The original Arkfeld really surprised me with its great runtime performance, being able to sustain 300 lumens flat for just over 2 hours. Really impressive for a light this size. I'm happy to see that trend continue, with all of these flat EDC lights performing very well. The Arkfeld Ultra once again offers excellent flat regulation throughout the run. The Jetbeam is very similar, trading higher output for shorter runtimes as expected. The Nitecore EDC 29 also displays similar performance on its sustainable modes, with a bit more fluctuation due to its active thermal regulation. Interestingly, I did find that on level 4, the output actually increased over the course of 5 minutes before it started dropping. Finally, the HD01 is the least impressive of the bunch, with a more noticeable drop in output and lower overall runtimes, yet it remains solid for the price and doesn't leave me wanting. Of course, the turbo levels on the EDC 29 aren't sustainable longer than a few seconds, which is fine given the massive output. This is a very different kind of mode in my opinion. 3 of these lights have ultraviolet emitters and lasers, about which I don't have much to say. They all perform basically exactly the same, which is to say quite good. If these features are useful to you, then you'll be very happy with any of these. The small head doesn't affect beam quality, which is solid across all of these options, though cool white emitters reign supreme. A shame, considering the older Arkfeld UV I have is equipped with a rather pleasant neutral white high CRI emitter. The E26 has an SFT40, a great high power emitter that throws a lot and has pretty nice color in this case, but it's clearly driven a bit too hard on turbo as it turns slightly blue in color. The Nitecore is the most unique with its UHI emitters, which are about as ugly as they are bright. The difference between flood and throw is dramatic, which is pretty cool, though the flood emitters only activate at the higher modes. I wish you could somehow select channels and outputs independently. The 3 lasers are nearly identical again, plenty bright and visible with 5 milliwatts of green light. The Wurkkos was ever so slightly brighter than the other 2. While Class 3R lasers aren't particularly hazardous to the eye, many cheap green lasers emit lots of invisible IR light, which does pose a threat. Unfortunately, I can't test that, so I have to cautiously assume the safety ratings here are accurate. Similarly, I don't have a proper way to test UV light, but all of these are outputting comparable levels of 365 nanometer light. There are no filters, but I think these are more than serviceable for EDC use. The inclusion of both lasers and UV emitters adds a ton of utility for some users. The Olight and Wurkkos lights both have a major advantage over the others. A press and hold of the button from off activates Moonlight mode. This is, in my opinion, an absolutely essential feature for EDC use. The Nitecore allows the user to select any mode before turning it on, which is nice, and a half press and hold gives it momentary low mode, but it's just too bright at 15 lumens. Tragically, the Jetbeam is completely lacking a proper Moonlight level. This light was actually a great EDC for me, but was seriously hurt by this flaw. Value-wise, unsurprisingly, the Wurkkos is the clear winner. At under $30 on their site, it's an excellent value and is easy to recommend. Perhaps as an option to someone who wants to try out this form factor. You can get either the standard version or the Pro version with both laser and UV for less than the competition. The Jetbeam is much more expensive at $90, which is a fine price, especially for the performance being offered here. Again, easy enough to recommend. The Olight is the priciest at $120, making it the worst value and the toughest to recommend due to the proprietary charger. I do believe that the build quality here is the best, especially considering the special aluminum alloy used, so in my opinion the price is still justified. Finally, there is the Nitecore EDC 29. This is, again, a slightly different type of light, lacking the extra features, but man, this thing is just wicked cool. Between the incredible output, great performance, and brilliant design, it's an easy recommendation and great value at $110. Pricey, yes, but worth it. Now that we made it this far, there's something important to address: replaceable versus non-replaceable batteries. Frankly, I don't want to beat any more horses about the value each design brings to the table, but I do want to bring up these very interesting lights from Wubin and Loopgear. Both have kind of a similar flat form factor, sort of, but they allow for rapid changes of their standard cell types. I'm very excited about both of these lights, and I have a review coming soon. This is another great design for EDC in my opinion. But there is simply no competition in terms of carryability. These built-in battery models are much more portable, and to reiterate, that is the main draw of this design. The fact remains that none of these batteries are replaceable, thus theoretically limiting the total usable lifespan for these lights. Is that a worthwhile trade-off to get the better carryability? With EDC in mind, I think it will be for many users. Yes, you cannot rapidly replace the batteries, but in exchange you get a very high-performance light, jam-packed with features in a form factor that is super comfortable to carry and use on a day-to-day basis. Perhaps that's the ideal setup for an EDC item. And I mean, if you need more, you can just use a bigger, more serious light for bigger, more serious jobs. It's up to you. Personally, I'll stick with my archaic old tubes. Better emitters, better beams, preferred interfaces, and yes, most of all, replaceable batteries are all worth more to me. But I'll start taking this new category of lights seriously. If you're interested in purchasing any of these lights, there will be links in the description, which might be affiliate or tracking links. I don't remember what I'm supposed to do. Also, Wurkkos sent me like 5 of these HDO1s to give away to you guys. I'll post the giveaway rules in the comments down below. And that's all. Thanks for watching.